Hey, Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Is this the first time we're talking in 2025?
Indeed.
Oh, well, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I started Nutrafol, and the thing that really sold me on it was the gratuitous mention of Michael's receding hairline over and over again.
Well, it's something that I think he would have enjoyed. Or
I don't know about that.
I think.
Or Sam would have enjoyed it.
What I meant was
Sam would have
that I would have enjoyed it at his expense.
I'm also not totally sure how it even tied into the ad. Really.
Well, this is what happened. Is that they sent us some Nutrafol like years ago. Michael didn't try it. It sat on the counter there, and then I started using it, and just because I was like, wait, I'm gonna try this, and then they came to us just coincidentally to sponsor the show. So.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't need to mention that Michael was balding towards the end.
I mean, to be fair, he was balding throughout the time he was here, and that was 8 years.
All right. Well, anyways, so I wanted to talk real quick about the sort of interplay between the criminal justice system and the immigration system. Trump kept saying that there were like.
We should tell people, if people don't know, you're an immigration attorney.
Yeah, that's true. Trump kept talking about how there were tens of thousands of murderers, like migrant murderers who'd been led into the country, which, excuse me, seems like a massive failure of the criminal justice system. Like, how are these people released? Why are they on the streets? I mean, normally if you're convicted of murder, you're in jail for a very, very long time.
Is he saying that they are murderers coming from other countries and that they've emptied out the jails and sent them here?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, that's dumb too, but for other reasons. But there is something interesting that happens. Sometimes we see this as immigration lawyers where, for example, last year I had this guy who was accused of rape, and he had a case going on in county court. And then ICE came in, they arrested him because he had an old removal order at the border from like 10 or 15 years ago. So they were going to reinstate this removal order. So he was in immigration detention. Meanwhile, he's got like a hearing coming up on this criminal case. And he was telling me, look, I know I have to leave the country, but I think I'm innocent. I want to take the case to trial. It's important that I clear my name. And so I tried contacting the prosecutor's office because basically I needed them to intervene. Like I could contact ICE and say, let him out, and they're going to ignore me. But if, maybe if the prosecutor reached out, they would listen to them. And in the end, they just deported the guy. And what ICE told me is that they had beef with this particular county because they didn't honor detainers. And so they weren't interested in even listening to what the prosecutor had to say. And so, in other words, you have a case where, like, there's either a victim who deserves, to have justice for what happened to them, or you have somebody who's, like, wrongfully accused who deserves to have their name cleared. And then out of nowhere, ICE comes in and they just send the guy back to Mexico. And anyways, it's just a dumb system overall. And this bill that they're trying to pass now is sort of filled with things like this, where you can take somebody who's accused of something and subject them to mandatory detention. Well, it turns out that criminal judges hate that because they end up not showing up to court and they end up with a warrant and they're not able to resolve the cases that are on their dockets. And this is something that already happens. And these types of measures, I think what ends up happening is lawmakers just see the top line, which is like, murderers are subject to mandatory detention,
but
people accused of murder.
The Lakin bill, my understanding is first of all, it's nonviolent offenses, but it's not even, you don't get a chance to be accused. I mean, excuse me, convicted. It's if you're accused. What is to stop ICE from saying, we saw you shoplift?
Mm-hmm. Or just a right-winger in the community that may have, I'm sorry,
anybody.
But may have anybody. You have a beef with your neighbor. And you know that perhaps his documentation status or someone in his family's document may not have the documentation. You could just accuse them of a crime credibly in some of these areas, and that could result in their deportation.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw that really. I mean, first of all, like ICE doesn't need a pretext. Like they'll do it anyways.
Right.
They'll just show up and arrest you if they want to. But in the first Trump administration, we saw, I mean, I'm just a solo practitioner. I don't have any associates or anything. I'm just one guy. And I think I had 3 or 4 cases of women who were themselves victims of domestic violence, whose abusive partners in a very calculated way called the police on them and accused the spouse of domestic violence. And they all ended up not just being arrested, by the police, but then ICE comes in and takes them to a federal immigration detention center, and where they have to fight for their lives, without the benefit of a supportive spouse or a family and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that sort of thing.
So the accused, in other words, the accused calls ICE on the accuser.
Right. So, I mean, one example, there was a lady who had saved up to buy catering dishes, plates and things like that for a small catering business. And when she came home, her husband had thrown them all in the trash because she hadn't done the dishes. And so she was upset, and she threatened to throw a Tupperware at him. And he said, well, do it. And so she did and missed, and he got up and called the cops. And so she ended up not just being arrested by the police, which, give me a break. But then also ICE came and took her, and she was detained and denied bond by an immigration judge. They said she was a danger to the community.
What about the part of this legislation where the AGs can interfere? What is your sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about it, and I'm not sure how that will, work. But I do know, other parts of the legislation don't make sense. For example, it subjects certain people to mandatory detention, but not deportation. So you could be subject to mandatory detention, but not actually be deportable.
Open-ended mandatory detention? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it means that the federal government could detain you indefinitely, that you wouldn't qualify for a bond or for getting out, but you're not actually subject to removal. So, I mean, this is why we're basically back in 1994, and this is the thing to keep in mind, I think, is that the reason our immigration laws suck so bad, there's lots of reasons, but one of the main ones is the tough on crime, tough on immigration movement of the late 90s drastically altered the legal immigration system and basically trapped hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people here without providing them lawful pathways to get papers. So the system is wrecked in part because of this tough on crime thing. And we're basically repeating history. We're doubling down, and we're thinking we're going to be able to tough our way out of this. And tough is the whole reason we're here in the first place. So it's very frustrating. And I think that the clip you played of Hassan earlier, humanizing people, I've really been thinking a lot about how, sorry if I'm rambling, but we sort of all failed to tell these stories in compelling ways and of immigrants and the people that are here and people in our communities, and that left a real vacuum for the other side, who put in a lot of work. I mean, Trump did lots and lots of press conferences and rallies with big cardboard posters of victims of immigrant crimes, and there was not a single ad or story about, this is a guy who's.
I mean, to be honest with you, look, I think there's two things. One is that I think there are a lot of people who sort of say, "Oh, there's some other cohort out there." It's not. Look, they're not gonna go and deport. Jose,
right.
he's he works hard. He's a great guy. I know his wife and his family. They're not going to deport him. They're going to deport the other ones. And you have even immigrants who say the same thing. But the failure, really, it seems to me, about telling these stories, and it's true, as a society, broadly speaking, we have failed at that. But this is also a political matter. The Democrats just did not. There's too many times when they are being when positions that they have are even popular, right? I mean, in the wake of Trump, supporting immigrants was popular. The Democrats just capitulate. And part of that is ideological. I mean, the Biden administration was just hostile from immigrants from day one. And they failed to tell a story. And when you create that kind of vacuum, and then, the people forget the whole, their whole super duper plan about the border was just a way to get, part of Build Back Better done at the end of 2023. And it was supposed to be a bill sweetener, and it ended up being sort of the primary part of the bill.
And then they did was hit the Republicans on it from a procedural perspective. They didn't offer an alternative vision.
No.
Yeah. I've always, sorry, last thing. I've always wondered, there were 1 million Obamacare votes when they knew they weren't going to repeal it, and they just kept doing it. And it was, performative. But I've always wondered why we couldn't vote for the DREAM Act, every day for 100 days.
Yes.
And highlight, these are the people who are voting against it. Make it really clear. I mean, people just don't know, right? So, the last thing.
This is the second. This is now the third last thing, buddy.
This is I'm on the fourth or fifth last thing, honestly. But if somebody's telling you about some immigrant who committed a crime, we have a criminal justice system. They've got to go before a judge, and there's a whole system for figuring that out. And then on the back end, there's a separate system, to see whether or not they're allowed to stay. And for some reason, we get those two things tied up and convoluted. So anyways, have a good day.
Goodbye, Ronald Reagan. Thank you for the call, buddy. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.